From the Bresco Broadband True FM podcast production studio in downtown Columbus, Bresco Broadband, faster than DSL, high-speed internet access solutions. Visit them online at brescobroadband.com. This is a True FM podcast.
Hi, it's Joel with Joel Speaks Out, and today we're going to be talking with my good friend Walter about living positively with HIV. Stay tuned.
Live, local, LGBT, Columbus's only station with LGBT music, talk, and news. Curiosity, The Tea with B, The Gay Girls Collective, Joel Speaks Out, True FM Online, your gay anthem station.
Welcome to Joel Speaks Out, the show that looks at the banquet of life, every dish on the table, and every guest at the party. I'm Joel Barrett, author of the upcoming book, Godly But Gay, and I'm your host. Each show, I'll be talking with you about the matters of life that matter to the lives of GLBTQ people. And it's so great to be back with you today. We are recording episode number 38 of Joel Speaks Out, which is hard to believe that we've had 38 episodes already. And so I want to talk to you today with a very good friend of mine. First, let me set this up by telling you about his husband, because his husband was a guest on Joel Speaks Out, and his name was Stephen Graham, or is Stephen Graham, not like he's passed or something. And you'll remember Stephen because he was the chef that I had on, and we talked about pork and cooking and food, and it was just so good. So his husband, Walter Davis, is my guest today, and Stephen will also be joining us at some point during the show. But right now, I just want to say, hey, welcome, Walter Davis, to Joel Speaks Out.
Thanks, Joel. I appreciate you having me on the show today.
Well, I'm happy to have you on, and I'm excited about what we're going to talk about today. I am 49 years old, and so I'm a little older than you, I believe, Walter. Isn't that correct?
That is correct. Not by much.
Well, I remember the 80s and the AIDS crisis, and I did lose a few acquaintances to the disease, and just remember the fear that was being, peddled, I guess is for lack of a better word, all over the United States, and how this disease, this new disease, and how do you get it, and all of the crazy things are happening. And so here we are now in 2015, and boy, things have changed. And now I remember, let me go back, in the 80s, you didn't hear the words living with HIV. But today you do, and Walter is here to talk about that. I want to talk about actually living with HIV. It's a very different world than it was in the 80s, isn't it, Walter?
It is. It's definitely a different world, and I remember the 80s as well, and it was a pretty scary time.
Yeah, like I said, those weren't words that you heard together. But let me tell my listeners a little bit about Walter. But first of all, I'll remind you that you are listening to Joel Speaks Out on True FM Online, your gay anthem station. And my guest today is Walter Davis. Walter is a self-proclaimed, I love this phrase, legend in his own living room. And of Native American European descent and AIDS survivor. He also enjoys all aspects of living life to the fullest, and I can attest to that. He enjoys cooking with his husband and traveling, reading, and being on social media. And he's co-author of a cookbook entitled Memorable Food from Memorable Times, which I didn't know that about you, Walter, until I read your bio, which he and his husband wrote after being inspired by family, friends, and travels. He currently is assisting on his husband's blog, oinkcooking.com, and resides in Chicago. So that's a beautiful bio there, Walter. I learned a little bit about you just from reading that.
Well, hopefully you'll be learning a lot more today. So,
So tell me a little bit about where you're from, and a little bit about your just kind of the specifics.
Absolutely. Well, I was born in Maryland, in a little town called Haverty Grace. It's on the Bay. And I was born into a military family. I was an Army brat up until about age, I'd say about 25. I've lived in different places, grew up in Hawaii, Texas, Germany, Alabama. So I've done it all my life, and that's continued through my adult life as well. I came out, well, my teens, I guess I should say, in the 90s. Um, I was a little club queen. So very active in the club scene there. I came out when I was 22, and I discovered that I was HIV positive at 26. It was about 2 months into my relationship with Steven when we met in Las Vegas. And I just remember at that point in time, it just changed, well, both of our lives.
I can imagine. Was that? Can I ask you how you discovered this? Did you just decide to go get tested, or?
Well, we did, yes. So we were 2 months into our relationship, and it was a point in time, we were getting serious, and so we thought for the best that we both go get checked out. So we did. It's something that we decided to do together, and at that moment in time, we were both thinking at least maybe one of us have it. We didn't know exactly who might have it. We both came from different worlds. I didn't date as much, and Stephen dated a lot more, and so we were kind of figuring this out. Going into this new relationship and figuring it out, and then so when we finally got tested, we discovered that I was the one with that was positive.
So were you in the habit of testing, going through regular testing?
Prior to that, I was not in the habit of testing. I sure wish I was, though.
Yeah. So that was your first test.
It was my first test, yes.
Wow. Yeah. That's amazing. Was it scary going in to get tested? Because before we get into a lot of the real bulk in our next segment of living with HIV, I'd like to address just kind of some of those fears, because I know even today, even when you go get tested, there's just a little bit of apprehension and I think a lot of people put it off just because they don't really want to know.
Yes, Joel. I was quite terrified going into it because I didn't know what to expect. And then waiting for the week or two after, it was just nerve-wracking.
Yeah. Fortunately, now the results come back much quicker than they did back in the day. But so you discovered you were HIV positive, and how did that impact this new relationship with Stephen?
Well, I actually gave him the choice. I said, well, now that we know, I said, you can either stay or, choose to go if this is something that you want to take on. I really thought that it was something that I was going to take on by myself. And so now he became part of it, and we've been on this journey ever since.
And how long is that journey?
15 years.
15 years. Congratulations, guys.
Thank you.
That is just awesome. Awesome. So, well, Walter, when we come back, let's talk a little bit about some of the common misconceptions about living with HIV, some of the things you've learned over the years, and advice that you might have for some others. But let's really delve into this and just really talk about all the ins and outs of HIV and living positively. I'm Joel Barrett. This is Joel Speaks Out on True FM Online. My guest today is Walter Davis, and we're talking about living with HIV.
This is a True FM podcast.
Evolution Theater Company presents the best in LGBTQIA theater. Original, thought-provoking, and entertaining. Visit evolutiontheater.org.
True FM podcast production facilities presented by Bresco Broadband.
Welcome back to Joel Speaks Out. I'm Joel Barrett, and today my guest is Walter Davis, who is a dear friend of mine and the husband to Stephen Graham, who was also a guest on Joel Speaks Out. And today we're talking about living with HIV. And Walter, before the break, you were telling me a little bit about getting tested, and that in your very first HIV test experience, you found out you were positive. What did that feel like? What went through your head when you got those results?
Joel, to be honest with you, I was very frustrated and feeling devastated in those first few moments. And then I was able to speak about it with Stephen, and we kind of worked through some things in that moment.
Well, I'm sure. I'm sure. Did it have the feel of finality or a death sentence, so to speak, in that moment?
In that moment in time, it did, yes.
So that's let's see. I don't know what is about 15 years ago now.
It was 15 years ago, and today is it's much different.
I was just going to say,
Much
obviously,
different.
that was not a death sentence at all, and that's something that I wanted to bring out to my listeners because I think that even today, with all we've learned and what we know, it can still feel that way. I have many friends who are HIV positive. So let me ask you, Walter, what have you learned about living with HIV over the years? I mean, what are some of the biggest things that, maybe your misconceptions or
I've actually learned quite a bit. One of the most important things I think for anybody to know is to know their status. It's important to get tested, especially if you're sexually active, like most of us are. It's important also to educate yourself on HIV. Whether you read about HIV or know somebody who has it, it's a good idea to educate yourself on that. Uh,
do you recommend particular websites or resources? Because there's a lot of information out there, and what's the most reliable?
there is a lot of information. I've been very fortunate living in a city like Chicago to be able to have resources at my fingertips. The Howard Brown Center has been a great resource for me. I have a great doctor, which Stephen actually has moved over and is working with now as well. What's great about having a doctor like this is that he's sex positive. He understands, he's also gay as well, so he understands the lives and that the importance of being sex positive in these things.
Define the term sex positive for my listeners, please.
Sex positive would be somebody who is open and knowing of the ideas of, in a sexual relationship. They don't shame you. There's doctors out there who will, who are HIV doctors, but they're not very positive and they don't encourage anything positive in sex. They can usually shame you, especially if it's open relationships as well.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So what are some of the things you've learned about just going on with life?
So one of the most important things for me, and that what I had to learn was being honest. So I was being honest to myself. I was being honest to my partner, to Stephen. I was being honest with my friends. When I was going down this journey, it took me about 9 years to actually be able to speak about being HIV positive. And because I didn't have those positive influences or that support group that I needed at the time. And I had to come to terms with myself to figure that out. And once I did, it kind of opened up the world for me. So I realized, we spoke about it before. It's not a death sentence. And then learning how to take care of my body now, knowing that it's not a death sentence. I also learned that I'm not alone in this. I have a great support system. I had to come out twice, if you will, to my family. Not only did I come out being gay, but now I had to come out 4 years later and say, hey, by the way, I'm HIV positive. So through, just learning more and educating my family on that, they've been able to
Sure.
become a great support in that matter.
Sure. Let me interrupt you for a second there. You're listening to Joel Speaks Out. You're listening to Joel as well. I kind of paused after that and it sounded like I'm just saying, hey, you're listening to Joel. Actually, listening to Joel Speaks Out, and my guest today is Walter Davis, and we're coming to you on True FM Online. And Walter, I want to back up right there and talk about when you came out to your family to reveal that you were HIV positive and to many others in your life. How were those reactions?
The the initial reaction was there was a lot of silence.
Mm-hmm.
I received a lot of silence. And then once it took a moment, once that my parents kind of took a moment to process it, then the questions started coming out. And when you're put in a situation like that, the best answer that I could have given at that moment in time is, I don't know what this is all about yet. But as soon as I know, I will share that information with you. And that's exactly what I told my parents. And so through the years, I've been able to kind of educate them on that as well.
And I think that in many areas of life, some of the most powerful words are the words "I don't know." And it's okay to not know. And we have this feeling that we have to know everything and answer every question. And I think it's really powerful that you're able to just say, you know what, I don't know, and that's okay. So, Walter, let me ask you a little bit about what's going on now in your life. Now that you've been living with for 15 years and you have a wonderful husband. So, tell me about what life looks like for you all now.
Life for us now has been fantastic. I mean, we've worked, I think in the beginning, it was working things out, finding I guess the right regimen has really helped out because there were times when, the regimens weren't right and they weren't right for my body or for my mind or anything. And so that's when I had to go back to the doctor and find the right regimen for that.
And what's your regiment that you're on now? I mean, have you seen a lot of advancements in medicine in the 15 years?
Oh my goodness, yes, I have. One of the big ones that and one of the oldest ones is Truvada, which they're using for PrEP now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm using one that's actually brand new. It's called Epsicom, and I take that with another medicine called Tivicay, and that doesn't seem to alter anything. There's not any side effects to it. And now I just read about this new injectable HIV regimen that you take every 8 weeks. So that's exciting news.
Yeah, it is. It is great. So I know you've got your husband, Stephen, nearby, and you want to bring him into this conversation a little bit in the remaining minutes?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Here he is.
Hi, Joel. Hi,
Hey,
Joel.
Stephen. Cuddle up close to Walter there. And you've heard everything that Walter's had to say, and I'm sure you've heard this conversation many times. So, what input do you have into all of this? What's your comments?
What people may not realize is me and Walter are what's called a serodiscordant couple. So I'm HIV negative and Walter is positive, and we have been for the full 18 years or 15 years. I tried adding 3 years there. And I think when people talk, and I listen to people talk about dating someone with HIV when they're negative, or you see on, things like Grindr and Growler and stuff like, oh, I don't have HIV, I don't want it, so I won't date anyone who's HIV positive. It's an ignorance that's out there that needs to stop,
Yes.
And me and Walter are living proof that just because one is positive, the other, you can have a wonderful relationship with the other being negative and staying negative. You just have to take certain precautions. And thank goodness for things like PrEP and other advancements in HIV studies that, we know better. We know there's certain things that you can do sexually that aren't as big of a risk or aren't a risk at all that years ago we used to think were risks.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I know the answer to this question, but I'm going to answer it anyway. So you guys have a pretty active sex life.
Yeah, pretty much.
Pretty active.
And so this hasn't stopped things for you.
No, not at all. Not at all. And the honesty with it and with each other about it, kind of allows a little more experimentation, I think.
It does. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, Stephen, thank you so much for piping in here and telling us a little bit about your perspective on it. I think it's really important for everyone in the gay community to hear from a couple like yourselves, and to know that no matter where you're at, no matter what the status is or isn't, none of these are it's not the end of the world. It's you learn how to live with what's been given to you, not to just stop living. And I think that's a fear of a lot of people.
Well, and as you know, me and Walter live quite a bit.
Yes, you do. So, Walter, what advice would you have in general for the gay community?
I think the most important advice is to know your status. Also educate yourself on the disease.
So, I'll be real honest with you. I see a lot of times, especially on profiles and things, where somebody will say, "Oh, and they'll use the word clean or something similar as of, and then they'll put a date, which might have been a week ago or it might have been a month ago. And thoughts about all of that. There's a lot that's implied by all of that.
There is definitely a lot implied. Me personally, I don't care for the term clean because that makes me feel like I'm supposed to be dirty, which I'm not. So for me, that's kind of a term that I would never use and never want anybody to use in that respect. But as far as getting tested, that's an important way for people, I guess, to put it out there, knowing that they are getting tested. But it's also important that they get tested a little bit more often.
But I'm going to pipe in. Dates don't matter. It can take 6 months for it to really show up in a test. And, just because you got tested last week, how many people did you sleep with since then? And, I would rather, and we've discussed it with friends that I have a friend that works in the HIV center in San Francisco. And, we talk and we say, I would rather have sex with someone who knows that they have HIV, tells you that they have HIV, because the majority of the time they're on their meds, they know they're undetectable, and it's safer than someone who is either going to lie or doesn't know.
Exactly.
I would have to agree with that.
I agree. I'm always, when I see the dates, I always kind of go, well, okay, so nothing's happened since then, or, it's like the dates to me are just kind of meaningless. And so I agree with you on that it's so important just to be tested regularly for your own sake, not so that you can throw a date around. No pun intended there. You are listening to Joel Speaks Out. I'm Joel Barrett. My guest today is Walter Davis and his husband, Stephen Graham. And we're going to come right back after these messages with more on True FM Online.
This is a True FM podcast.
Hey there, it's Andy Rajani, your current Mr. Southman from Columbus, Ohio. Exposed to HIV recently? You should know about PrEP. Check with your doctor, AHF Pharmacy, or the Columbus Health Department.
Kaleidoscope Youth Center, helping to create safe and empowering environments for LGBTQ youth through advocacy, education, and support. Learn more at kycohio.org.
True FM podcast production facilities, presented by Bresco Broadband.
Welcome back to Joel Speaks Out. I'm Joel Barrett, and today my guest is Walter Davis, and we're talking about living, and I say that with emphasis on purpose, living with HIV. Walter, during the break, you were talking about some interesting things about your history that I wanted to bring out on the air here, kind of about the journey of finding out, getting off your meds, getting on meds. Tell us a little bit about what we were talking about during the break.
So kind of to recap what we were talking about, we were talking about kind of the journey that I had, realizing finding a great doctor, how important it is, and how I started medications, and then I went off medications and relapsed and went into full-blown AIDS, and was able to pull back out by remaining on my regimen from this point on, and really being able to live again.
I think that's just so important for people to hear, because I'm not sure that everybody realizes that that's even possible.
Well, what's also important is, he had to go off his meds for a month because he didn't have insurance at the time, and it was really hard to find a program out there that he could get his meds for free while he didn't have insurance. And there are programs out there. We found them mostly in big cities, but it only took a month for him to relapse completely, but he was able to come back.
That's awesome. And I'm so glad that you were there for him, Stephen. And I'm so glad, Walter, that you are the healthy Walter that I know today.
Well, I'm always glad to be here. I'm thankful every single day.
I understand completely. Any final thoughts from my listeners, maybe resources or just some final thoughts?
I think, the final thoughts, know your status, get educated, and then also check out the local resources that you have. There's also government resources available at your fingertips to if you are in a situation where you don't have insurance.
Let me remind everybody that we will have all of your links to connect with you on the True FM online website. And we'll also post some links to some general information. Walter, we're running out of time today, but thanks so much for sharing so openly and honestly and authentically with my listeners.
Anytime. Thank you for having me.
I appreciate it so much. We'll make sure and have all that information posted on the True FM online website on the Joel Barrett Joel Speaks Out page. And just remind you that you've been listening to Joel Speaks Out. You can connect with me on True FM online or at joelspeaksout.com. Remember, life's a banquet, so get out there and live.